So your CFO hire isn't working. Now what? This is the title of our episode for today. Too often I see many business owners who took a leap of faith and decided to bring on their accountant or their bookkeeper or so-called quote unquote CFO in air quotes, for those of you who can see us, to handle their finances. And then you trusted them and yet you're still not getting the results and the guidance that you expected. You still feel like you're flying blind, that you're making gut decisions. Nothing really changed, though you're still getting reports. Don't get me wrong, they are doing work, but the reports are not the right type of data that you need. They're not interpreting that for you. They're not useful. And every time you ask a hard question, they give you a vague answer. Does that sound familiar? Some of you maybe have encountered a quote unquote CFO team that you ask the hard questions from and they just say, we're not used to our clients knowing their numbers so well. And that is really disappointing because you're paying a lot of money for a service that you are not getting. And this is really frustrating. And a lot of business owners find themselves in this situation because they never manage a finance function in their company. And they're trusting that who they're bringing on, they can delegate and trust that they're going to do their job to lead the finance function in their company. So today we're going to explore a little bit of what that looks like and then some warning signs you can identify to see if you have the right CFO in your team. And also just to reiterate that I think a lot of these people that are offering these services, they're doing it from a place of serving clients and trying to help, but they just don't have the skill set or the experience to do so. And they're lacking that. And they just don't know what they don't know. So it's hard for them to be able to deliver on a scope of work that they've promised that they are just not skilled and capable of doing. So I don't think they're coming from a bad place, but it's really important that you differentiate between real CFOs with experience versus those who say they can do it and then can deliver so that you can quickly pivot to the right person. Now, let's just be clear. This is totally not your fault. Again, you hired a finance function, but you never managed one. So how would you know if they're any good until you get in it? And at first, they probably are doing a great job through the onboarding, creating this dashboards and giving you this report. But then when it comes down to managing the business through the finances, that's where it falls flat. And we want to make sure that we know what to do with it, how to identify it, and how to pivot from it. Okay, so let's start with what you were hoping to get as a service. It's someone who can take on the financial stress of your plate entirely and someone who can proactively manage before any crisis shows up in your business. A strategic partner who speaks your language and understands the numbers and can also explain them to you in simple terms. I often see there's a red flag when people cannot make complex things into simple, easy to understand because they don't have that experience or skill set to simplify the complexity. They also, are coming in with confidence and you're like, finally, someone to help me take the finances and get them under control. And you trusted them to make all that happen, though you feel that disconnect still. Okay, so what you probably got was accurate bookkeeping, which is important in the foundation of good financial management, but it's not enough. You need more than that. You need the numbers interpreted. You need explanations on why the numbers are the way they are and what to do about it, more importantly, going forward to make a change and course correct. Now, often those accurate bookkeeping reports and things they're sending you have no forward-looking insight. So this is already a big gap because CFOs work in forward-looking projections, estimation, under certainty. We create assumptions and we build systems and ways that we can mitigate risk and capture opportunity. And we help you navigate that uncertainty and that ambiguity through assumptions and scenario planning. So if this is not the kind of conversations you're having, you can already tell this might not be a CFO and there's a big gap. They're overly focused on tax compliance, which is great because someone needs to do the tax, but that is not the function of a CFO. I did an episode on the relationship between profit and tax, which we'll link below, but that is a different function that a CFO serves in that case, where we are just projecting the profit and really helping you understand how does that tie to your tax liability. We're not actually doing tax compliance. That is the CPA's and accountant's job. And we want to make sure we stay in our lanes. And also with that, there's a lack of strategic input or direction. They can build a business strategy for you. They can't say, oh, we should look at pricing. We should look at margins. We should look at the type of clients. We should look at diversifying from different regions, different type of locations. We should expand, we should grow. And what does that look like in a plan mapped out? They tend to be someone reactive and not proactive in your business. They're not coming to you with things that they're identifying as problems. They're waiting until the problems show up and then bringing it up to you to say, oh, this happened in the past. And what you want is someone that's ahead of that sees a trend coming and it can identify a potential problem and then can solve it before that becomes a problem. Now, most of the reporting they're getting you is what happened in the past, not what might that mean for the future or what to do next. And yes, we do leverage past historical data to help clients understand what's going on in their business, but we're also mapping forward what we want to see in the business and our expectations going forward for outcomes that we're trying to drive and whether or not we materialize those outcomes. That paired with a strong set of assumptions, like we want to know how many, by when, how is that going to be possible, at what price point, and those have been aligned as part of the plan. And then we're just measuring against that to see if we hit those goals or if we're on track or off track from those. Okay, now I'm sure this quote unquote, air quote CFOs mean really well. And there's just a mismatch in skill set and what they are offering you as a service versus what they're capable of doing. And, they might be really good at what they do around bookkeeping, tax, or why not. And we know we need people like that in our team, but not to play the CFO function in your company because that is not the role. And if you're not clear on what the roles are, I did an episode 19 on my podcast where I talk about 4 financial roles in your money support team that are explained for you to understand what the roles, deliverables, and expectations are of the different service providers at different levels. Now let's talk about what a true CFO does, because I feel like this can be confusing at times for people who haven't worked with a CFO before, or maybe they do have someone again on their team who says they're a CFO, but they're not doing any of this work. And that is where the gap comes. So now you know how to best hold your team accountable for delivering on this forward-looking, proactive forecasting role that they need to be playing. So they need to be living in the future. They should be talking about the next month, the next 6 months, the next year. What are we going to do? How are we going to grow? What are we going to focus on so that we can then impact going forward what that needs to look like and how is it different from what we're doing today. They are the person who's looking around the corner to just check before we go in a room. So that should give you an idea of what that feels like. They're always ahead of the curve. They're making sure that they're in front of it and not, reacting to it. And this is an important aspect of the work that they do to get us ahead of risks and also capture opportunities as we see them present themselves. This is part of the job. They should be translating financial data into business decisions. So should we hire another person? Yes or no? Should we open another location? If so, by when? How much is that going to cost us? And planning for those things before we make a decision so we can evaluate to see if that decision is the right decision and if it's the right time to make that decision so that we can afford it and not be worse off after the fact. We don't want to just deal with consequences. Like part of our job as CFO is to get ahead of what could be the risk and consequences of the decision and then decide if we want to move forward with it or not, or if we want to go a different direction. Now, a good CFO is also going to manage risk, capital allocations, where's money being allocated to what, for what reason, prioritizing that too, because we can't afford everything, as you know, and making sure that we are allocating to the right buckets. This is part of our job, is if we want to grow and we need to invest in marketing, that we're calling that out. What are we doing in that category? Who are we going to hire? How are we going to measure their success before we go find the right provider to support us? These are the kind of things, and we manage a lot through key performance indicators, KPIs that are leading, not lagging, meaning on the front end, how many inquiries are we getting? Are we converting those inquiries? At what rate? Is that improving over time or is it getting worse? Do we have even like the right qualified inquiries and leads coming through? And this is where I think the job of the CFO starts to touch on business strategy and business outcomes and deliverables. Is all connected to money, because at the end of this whole journey, you would have revenue, but we don't manage revenue. We manage what happens before revenue becomes, comes into the bank account. We need to be understanding like how healthy is the front end of the business that gets us to an ultimate goal of revenue or cash in the bank. This is part of managing the financial strategy and ultimately business strategy. It's much more than the numbers. It's connecting the dots around all the things we're doing in business business to drive financial outcomes. And so if these are not the kind of conversations your CFOs bring into the table, then I'd be really worried that they might not be skilled at managing business growth strategy and helping you achieve those bigger goals. Now, a good CFO also knows when to push back and how to challenge a CEO and really have a healthy debate around the options and opportunities they want to tackle. And at times, CFOs might disagree with the path forward. We always say ultimately it's the CEO's decision, but it's our job to inform them of what that decision can do to the business finances and then allow them room to decide if that's how they want to move forward. And then also deal with the consequences of making a decision, which we probably have already outlined and discussed in depth as part of saying like, we don't think this is the right time or like the right decision right now. And this is why. And then allowing the CEO to take a risk if they decide to go that path. That's fine. At least we understand what we might be dealing with on the other end of it. So again, we're not the decision makers, but we're trying to influence where the decisions go based on the financial aspect of the companies to ensure health. And also, a good cash reserve can solve a lot of these problems where you're like willing to take more risk as a CFO because you have the cash reserves to back it if something doesn't go according to plan. And even when we're doing opportunity seeking, same thing is both on the risk and the opportunity side. If we have a good cash cushion, we might be more willing to take more of those opportunities and grow faster and, open 3 locations in 1 year rather than just one because we know we can afford to do that because we have that cash runway to back it or a line of credit or access to capital that can help us fuel that growth. Okay. And ultimately the job of the CFO is to touch every aspect of business because everything in business touches money. So anything from operations efficiency, saving time, streamlining processes to marketing outcomes. Are we getting the right marketing strategies in place to get the outcomes that we expect? If not, do we need to make a change and partner with marketing to make those adjustments? Everything from hiring. Are we bringing the right people in? Are we experiencing turnover? How's that impacting the finances? And trying to avoid that by spending more time on the hiring process and the right onboarding and training to ensure people stay long-term with the company because turnover is expensive. And then what are the things we're doing to grow, right? CFOs are focused on growth because that's part of our job is to help the company grow faster, better, easier, and with less mistakes than they would on their own. And then have a proven path on how we're going to create that growth, that we understand exactly what it would take and how long it's going to take to grow by how much. And then that ultimately translates into more profit as well. Because just because you're growing doesn't mean you're making more profit. That's a whole nother episode. But we see often companies grow top line revenue and they spend more and outpaces like their profit. And then they end up being with less profit than the previous year. So that's a whole nother array of problems we need to solve there. But that is a situation we see often on why CFOs get brought into companies to fix some of those underlying issues that are causing the lower profitability. Now, let's be clear. A CFO is not just like a better accountant or a different kind of accountant. It's a completely different function with a completely different set of skills. So it's a different role that we play in how we support a business and the partnership we bring to the CEO on problem solving, decision making, and data interpretation to make better financial decisions for the company. Now, I often see a lot of accountants providing advisory support or calling themselves a CFO. And what we often see happen, and I'll touch on this on another episode, is that is the equivalent of asking your general doctor that does your regular checkups to be your cardiologist and do open heart surgery. It's just a different set of skills. It's a different function. There's so much more that needs to be learned and known and skill and experience needed to play this role. And not to say that accountants can be good CFOs if they have the skill set, by all means. But I think often we see there's a gap because they're so focused on the present and the past or just numbers and not really overall business strategy, which is really what we do as CFOs is we start with business strategy and then we put numbers to the strategy. So not the other way around. Okay, so there's a few reasons why the CFO function could be at times misleading or you might get the wrong person in the seat. It's because anyone can call themselves a CFO, which is really unnerving, I know. But, bookkeepers making themselves CFOs overnight and telling you they're going to give you a report and they think that's the job of a CFO, which we know it's not because we just cover what it should be. So it's important that you look at backgrounds and credentials so that you know who you're working with. Also, you could, hire someone on a test run and then give it a try before you commit long term. We do this often with our clients to show them that we are the right CFO and that we can bring a lot of value to the work we do for them and quick impact and wins so that they feel supported and know that they have the right CFO for their company. Often I see people hiring CFOs based on how the sales pitch is going and they're really just trusting this person to play the role that they say they can. So it's, again, not your fault if you're being misled by providers that really don't know how to do the CFO function and think think they can get away with it long term, because the gaps will start to show over time, maybe not right away. And then if you still feel uncertain and unsupported, and you still feel you have more questions than answers when you have a CFO on the team, then that's a problem. And you want to make sure you address it by changing providers, exploring new providers, and then making sure you find the right fit CFO for your business. Now, this is not about blaming anyone. I know it can be frustrated, but it's really important to have the right alignment with your CFO provider. And honestly, sometimes the CFO CEO relationship, there has to be some chemistry there too. You can trust your CFO to help you make better decisions, that you can work well with them, that they can challenge you, and that they can push you and help you make better decisions ultimately, because you're both working towards the same goal. And sometimes we just don't hire the right CFO, and that's okay. And you want to try again and make sure you get the right fit. But the business owners that are the most successful are the ones that recognize there's a gap and they do something about it. So don't take too long. Make sure you give your provider, for a chance to demonstrate what they can do. And if they're just not the right fit, or they're not the right CFO for you, that you consider making a change. Okay, so a few things for you to consider when there might be some warning signs. Some questions that I like to ask is, are you making financial decisions without proactively having someone to advise you? Like you feel like you're still not getting that advice and support you are paying for. You don't have a rolling cash flow forecast 13 weeks out where it tells you what might be coming in from a business perspective and clarity on that cash runway. Again, another red flag is when CFOs have always said yes to everything you ask them to finance or cover from a budget perspective. Maybe they don't even have a budget. I'm not sure. Like that's how we function here, is we have a clear budget and a plan, and we deviate from that. We discuss why, where we're going to pull it from, what trade-offs we're going to make, and how we're going to make decisions to help cover those costs. Or if we see a trajectory of growth and revenue, that we can cover it from that runway and allocate the dollars based on that. But yeah, a CFO that never challenges any questions or decisions you're making, another red flag. CFO who can't tell you what you need to do to get your business ready for sale, because a business that's always ready for sale means it's a profitable business that's producing sustainable cash flow. So this is an important area that a CFO plays a big role in, as well as preparing for sale at all times. And we talk about this in a separate episode. Financial problems after they have happened, and maybe CFOs who never work with a board of directors or investors or lenders could also be another mismatch or warning sign. And then when you're asking forward-looking questions when they're giving you backwards-looking data, that is a big gap as well. If you can't trust your CFO to help you navigate through a crisis financially, again, they maybe didn't anticipate it, or they did, besides the point, but if they can't help you navigate through that, then maybe this is not the right quote-unquote CFO. This is really about having like the right person in the seat that can help you make better financial decisions in the company and help you navigate the uncertainty of business ownership. People who stay in their correct roles and the right lanes tend to be better service providers and can help you, support you in the things that they are experts in. So this is all that is. It's an alignment thing and reconsidering who you have in your team that is serving different purposes. And at times, this is just a symptom of graduating to needing CFO or financial leadership that you don't currently have. And that becomes clear because, again, they're not helping you make decisions and partnering with you to understand what's happening in the business and explain it in a way that is simple. So we always say having a CFO on your team that delivers on that value and support is not a luxury. It's really a structural infrastructure system needed in the company to keep scaling and growing profitably. We don't want to have expensive gaps become something that we can't close over time. And the bigger your business is, the harder those gaps are to close over time if you haven't addressed them. Now, just to close us off, this conversation is really about not shying away from bringing a CFO into your team or making a bad decision. It's really about making the decision you can with the information you have at a time. Now you know more. After listening to this episode, you can make better decisions on who you bring into your company for your team. And when those gaps are showing up, you know that you need to address it and make a change. And we really just want you to have the CFO that helps you achieve those goals for your company, that is really helping move the needle financially, that can show results for the work that they're doing and helping you navigate through the ups and downs and the unexpected, and ultimately leaving you better financially than you were because the results are there to show for it. So if you're looking for a fractional CFO, we would love for you to consider us. We have a team with corporate finance background, bringing corporate finance tools to small business owners. And if you want someone in your team that do the things that I've outlined as the job of the CFO, then make sure to book a a call with us at wealthworthwithin.com. Let's get started and book a call to talk to one of our CFOs to see if we can be the right fit for your team. And we would love to support you in the way that a real CFO is supposed to do for the scope of work and deliverables that you expect from a professional CFO team. So thank you for being here. Make sure you share this episode with someone who needs to hear this information as they're navigating maybe the situation or to avoid it in the future. And then until next time, thank you.